thanks very much. It's a shame to wait because for those who don't know, my name's Nicholas True, and I have the honour of being leader of Richmond Council until the next local election, 2018. And when I was elected leader in 2010, one of the things that I was very keen to do, and our administration was very keen to do, was to really build on the very strong community feeling that there is in this borough. And isn't it wonderful to look around and see all the stalls from local groups and local people, wonderful voluntary sense we have. But I felt very much, and do feel very much, that we're alienated from politicians and the centre. Everything is done by emails and spin and tweets and all these things that I don't really understand very well. And it seemed to me that it'd be an important thing that firstly the leader and some of the other colleagues should come out and meet people. I liked old-fashioned meetings and public halls when you could look people in the eye and you could have a good conversation. So that was one thing I wanted to do. The other thing we're very keen to do is to develop this concept of what we call village planning. And this is being rolled out bit by bit across the borough, and it's coming to Hampton and Hampton Hill. Hampton and Hampton Hill are united for the purpose of this meeting, but obviously the village planning process will be different for the two villages, because when we first did the survey, we asked people to say, what is your community? And they don't always coincide with ward boundaries, and we're following those. The idea of the village planning exercise is to enable people who actually live in the area to have a direct say in what happens, what is important, and ultimately what you decide and you ask for in terms of the local plan can literally be embedded in the local plan to try and protect, as far as we can in these days, when more and more is being taken away from local councils, control local planning, protect the facilities and the things that are important to your communities. So we're here to listen. This is the first stage, really, these question times of that process. There's leaflets at the back explain. There will be drop-in sessions where you can go in and put ideas. There'll be physical walkabouts, walking around the area with officers, and over time this will all contribute, hopefully, to the creation of special plans for Hampton and Hampton Hill. None of us here on the panel, Barry Martin is going to be our chair, so you won't have to hear much more from me. Barry, you all know, former head of Hampton School and long-time Hampton resident. We have Councillor Stephen Speak at the end, is responsible for transport and traffic. Councillor Paul Hodgins is responsible for schools, education. Councillor Susan Chappell, responsible for the voluntary sector, community and planning. And Councillor Pamela Fleming at the end, who's responsible for environment, business and community. We're here to take your questions. It's not a quiz show. One of you in this room will know more about Hampton and this community than probably any of us. We want to listen, hear from you and be part of a process. We're not trying to be clever. I hate politicians who try to be clever. You know better than us what's important. So let's fire away, have these questions, have a discussion, and hopefully a good 2 hours, which can be a prelude to something really creative and positive for these communities. And thank you so much for taking the time to come out and give your time to this.
Thank you very much, Councillor True. If it's all right, I'll speak sitting down, otherwise I'll be bobbing up and down all evening. But can I just add my words of welcome to Councillor True to this evening. This is in fact, I think, the borough's 10th of these leaders' question time events. My role is purely to be an independent chair and to field the questions out to whichever councillor is the appropriate one to deal with it. Could I ask all the speakers up here, please, to microphone because this event, I think, is being recorded and filmed. And when it's your turn to ask a question from the floor, a microphone will be brought to you. Could you please use it so that we can all hear your question, which is terribly important, very clearly. Thank you. Housekeeping matters. I don't believe there are any planned fire drills this evening, so if you hear a fire alarm, it's for real. The fire exits are clearly marked along the side of the room. If you need what the Americans call the bathroom, I understand that they're by the front entrance. The first hour of what we do will be responding to the pre-submitted questions. One of the intentions of the evening, I'm advised, is to make sure that we get a spread of questions and that we cover a range. So there is actually an 8-minute time limit on a question area, and I've got an electronic gadget up here which I shall press when the questions start, and it'll make a noise at the end of 8 minutes. This is to ensure that we do cover a full range of questions. The pre-submitted questions, all those of you who pre-submitted one, I understand have been given a copy of what you pre-submitted when you arrived. So please could you read that out exactly as you wrote it. I shall ask you to read your question out in just a moment when we start. The relevant panel member will respond. Then there will be an opportunity for you to ask a supplementary question if you want to drill further into the issue, and we'll go from there. I'm going to try and keep very much to an 8-minute allocation because we do want to cover the full range of issues. After the hour is up, hopefully it'll be about an hour covering the pre-submitted questions, we'll move to an open agenda, and I will try and take questions from the floor as fairly as I can around the room. Please make sure you indicate clearly if you want to ask a question. I'll keep an eye on the back, and please wait for the microphone to reach you before you answer the question. Questions have to be related to Hampton and Hampton Hill. I shall be fairly strict on timings, as I've been instructed to be. We will finish at 8:30 at the latest. I think that probably covers everything that I need to say by way of housekeeping and procedure. So I'm going to move on immediately to the first set of pre-submitted questions. I'm going to take the largest area of interest as one group at the beginning. There were, in fact, I think it's about 6 pre-submitted questions on parking around the area, and I'm going to ask each resident who submitted a question to take all 6, and then because 5 of them are relatively, we'll see, are relatively close together, and then I'm going to ask the relevant councillor to deal with all of those, and we'll go that way. So could I start by asking John Farndon?
No question yet.
You haven't been handed your question. Would you like me to read it out? Delighted to read your question for you. Provided that the staff record is take me out. Right. John Farland's question is, we all appreciate the good work done by our various local schools, but are equally worried by the chaos caused by the thoughtless parking and driving by both parents and pupils. The two large schools both have spacious land and could arrange for parking on site. If the pupils are fit to drive on the public roads, they should be able to drive carefully on school property. In the summer, I frequently have to request people parking in Hollis Close to switch their engine off and not further pollute the atmosphere. The disruption caused to buses, which frequently find it impossible to follow their official route, is yet another problem affecting the wider public. The second question is from Simon Lee. Is he here? Does he have his question? Would he like to read it? Simon Lee is not here, so I will read his. I would like to, there's a word missing here, I would like to encourage to see a sensible, proactive approach being considered to deal with the heavy amount of traffic.
Sorry, we can't hear you at the back.
Right. I used to run a school, so I now raise my voice and try and get to the room. That's all right. Can you hear me now? I would like to see a sensible, proactive approach to be considered to deal with the heavy amount of traffic and the directly associated parking issues as a result of Hampton Station being used as a hub for non-local commuters. Every inch of curb is now taken up with an excess amount of cars. Beyond an inconvenience, there are consequences of safety to be considered, especially for the amount of school children in the vicinity at certain times. Narrow roads are now completely blocked on both sides of the road, creating unnecessary traffic jams and unsafe crossing conditions and school drop-off and collections for local parents. We have a need to limit the available parking in the area for non-residents, create spaces with clear visibility in all the local roads and safe drop-off and collection areas for parents, many of which have children at both the local infant and junior school. It is extremely dangerous to exit home drives in the mornings without children and pedestrians being at risk. Every inch of road is parked on, often spilling over residential driveways. There must be a cost-effective, sensible solution, and I would also suggest designated areas for use by non-residents for a fee, which could be used to support the local areas. I just want to add that I'm not trying to keep all outside traffic away from Hampton Station. I just think we need to apply a little more thought. Two examples to be looking at are the junction where Gloucester Road meets Wensleydale Road. There is a little green area which during the day gets cars parked around it. This totally obscures the vision in every direction of what is a complex junction. There are near misses on a regular basis. My belief is that this needs to have the parking restrictions of a single yellow line. The second example is Ashley Road, the 300 yards directly outside the station up to Hampton Junior School. This is reduced to a single lane, but with two-way school traffic every weekday and creates a blind corner and regular traffic jams. This causes issues of school drop-off and pick-up, including safety concerns. At the very least, one side of the road needs to have daytime parking restrictions. There are other examples, but these are my main concerns. A secondary consideration would be to perhaps introduce some kind of tariff for non-locals to cover the cost of any new parking initiative and contribute to the local maintenance. I am aware that local councils are and have been dealing with such issues at other train stations, but I do not understand why Hampton has not been dealt with. The third question, and the remaining ones are somewhat shorter. Yes, please.
Well, I'll try and shout.
Okay.
I would like to know what the council is going to do about the parking around Station Road. There is no public car park in Hampton, and with the constant building of new flats and houses in and around this area, there is no more space for any cars. I understand that when properties are built, there has to be one allocated parking space, but as most families have at least 2 cars, there is simply not enough parking available.
Thank you. The fourth question is Brian Sparham.
I don't have my question, but I think it's been covered already pretty well by you.
I'm very grateful to you, sir. All your points have been praised in the earlier
It's a very lengthy one, I haven't covered it.
I think that's very noble of you. Tim Lester.
It's very brief, Dan.
Thank you.
Are there any plans to address parking problems around Hampton Station?
Succinct and perfect. Thank you very much. Sally Wilson. Thank you.
My question has also been covered, but I would just like to add that because of people from outside coming into Hampton to use the station, they're parking further and further away from the station, which affects more and more streets. Just makes the whole thing worse.
Thank you very much. Now that was 6 very important questions. I'm going to ask Councillor Speak to deal with those issues.
Right, thank you. An awful lot of the same sort of issues there. Starting first of all with the school question, and there's something very bizarre, I think, in the way that children that get 17 seem to lose the ability to use their own legs and decide to drive to school. But as long as they've got valid tax and valid insurance, they're entitled to use the road, and it is a public road. So on that basis, they are allowed to park where they want, provided of course they're not breaching any of the parking restrictions. Whether they can park on the school is an issue for the school, and I'd venture to suggest that Barry Martin probably knows more than I do on that school. We do work, as the council, we do work with the school to try and encourage them to adopt travel plans to try and discourage people from using, and this is for parents as well as pupils, to discourage people from using cars and parking thoughtlessly on residential roads. Hampton School has itself achieved a bronze accreditation. There are three stages, obviously bronze, silver and gold. So Hampton has achieved bronze. Hampton Academy and LEH have not yet developed any plans, but we continue as a council, we continue to engage with them, and we'll very much take on board the issues of students parking thoughtlessly. I'm certainly conscious of the problems that the 111 bus has going up Nightingale Road, and as a result of that, we painted in the road various keep clears, white lines. We're continuing to monitor that situation. The issue there for other people who don't know is that 111 gets blocked in Nightingale, never wants to divert and goes up Acacia Road. That's obviously frustrating for people on the bus, and equally frustrating for the residents. So we're trying to solve that problem by painting lines on the road to try and encourage people to park in the right locations and keep away from the bus. Now that particular issue is sufficiently important that Councillor Samuel has in fact arranged a public meeting with the schools, with the bus operators, and with myself again, on Wednesday the 24th of February. I think there are leaflets down here. The meeting will be here, at the back perhaps. So the meeting will be here, and if it's an issue, I'd encourage you to come along and hear from the bus operator as well, and the schools, and put the questions to the schools. In terms of the other parking issues, and we are conscious of the problems, and it's not unique to Hampton, of commuters driving to the stations close by where they can obviously pay less on their rail fares, and it's free parking. So it is an issue around Hampton, I'm certainly conscious of that. Work has been done in the past to try and put restrictions in the area, and I'm conscious that it's a bit of a hodgepodge of arrangements there, and it could be improved. And with that in mind, the officers are going to be looking at it later in this year with a view to picking up the whole area and saying, okay, well, how can we manage it better? Working with the retailers as well to try and make sure that there is space available for people to drive and use the shops locally. The road safety issues are, when people park badly, is a major concern to me. And again, not just in Hampton, but the schools elsewhere. I don't want child injuries on my conscience. So I will do what I can to make sure that the schools and the council are engaging, and that the schools are taking more of a lead in terms of encouraging parents to park more carefully. The issue on Wensleydale and the little town there, several people did mention that. There haven't been any accidents in that location, so although I certainly can see that visibility blocked when people are exiting from there. It's perhaps not going to be the highest priority, other than, as I said earlier, we'll pick it up as part and parcel of the review of parking in the area. The obvious way of controlling non-residents from coming into an area is through a community parking zone, so whereby residents buy permits and they have the use of the roads. They, to be perfectly honest, CPZs cause as much trouble as they solve, so it's something that we as a council say we want a majority of people, of households, so 51% in any particular road, if they want a CPZ, to show that they support it. I think I've covered everything. Sorry, no, one last point on the planning. The council has a development management plan which specifies what the minimum parking standards are. And for residential units, it's one space for 1 to 2 bed units, 1 to 1.5 or 3 bed units, and 2 spaces for 4 plus bed units. So those are the standards which have been set out. I don't know, maybe if Councillor Chapman wants to add a bit more onto that.
Right, sorry, Councillor True wishes to say.
No.
Do you wish to speak? Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I personally feel quite strongly about, and it's something that we are, as a council, very aware of. But we are constrained into how far we can push that in terms of how we have to follow the London Plan and the National Policy Framework. But it's certainly something where we do insist on maximum parking standards so that we minimise the impact, particularly with new developments. But we are also aware that there are a lot of developments, particularly offices to residential, which we find very difficult to stomach, but something that we are having to accept. So it is very important to us, and we will continue to watch it very carefully.
Thank you very much. As there, I understand, there's a whole evening devoted to the parking issues around the Hamworth Road area, could we have, and we have taken rather longer than I should have on this incredibly important issue. Could I just say, could we have one supplementary question, perhaps a collective one, on the issue of parking down by the station, if anyone would like to put one? I'll be guided by how the meeting flows. Sir.
My first question is very short. All the response has been in terms of parking restrictions and so on, but there is an alternative, and that is that over the years, a range of parcels of land which were either open or were being redeveloped have been developed and are now blocked off, and that's down to planning permission being given for those sites. It seems to me that a number of other stations or councils have been a bit more far-sighted in terms of keeping some land around the station for parking, or maybe it was British Rail in those days. But what I might ask is that if there are opportunities to actually acquire some land or redevelop it as parking, then perhaps it should be considered.
Thank you. Who would like to do that?
This is working, yes. I think that the point you make is a very good one, and certainly at the theoretical and commonsensical level. Obviously, one of the major problems, there are several which are pressing in on this. One is just the increasing number of people coming to live in all parts of London and wanting to. And the Greater London authorities and also the government are bearing down extremely heavily on local authorities in terms of new build. Indeed, in Parliament we're just beginning to discuss a bill which will give the government power to seize any public land that isn't developed and effectively develop it through the London Land Commission in London. I personally strongly object to that on localist grounds, but the prospect of councils actually holding on to land which they don't develop, apart from that, it's very obviously strictly protected land, metropolitan land and so on, it's sort of bits of brown land, as it were, the kind of things that are used for parking very often. We're under intense pressure which can only grow. far as buying property is concerned, obviously that comes down to money. At the moment, we're not terribly flush with money, and the Chancellor's not writing out many cheques. But I do think the points made is a good point. We really do have to have a much more sensible discussion in London about how we can have the capacity, if we're going to have a population that some people say will grow to 13 million from 8 million by 2050, then I think people have to endorse that specifically. Because if it's not endorsed, the kind of problems that we are encountering now will only grow. I have a lot of sympathy with what you say, but the tide of affairs is against councils being able to do those sort of things. It's not difficulties. I would love to keep those powers, but I think we're not going to be able to.
Thank you very much. Is it a quick one, please? Yeah, if you could, as I'd like to move on.
Bearing in mind looking to the future, as was mentioned just now, and also that you're restricted with council money, what about other stakeholders in this, such as South West Trains and, say, the developers who may or may not be developing at Kempton Park? Our parking problems could get a lot worse if that goes ahead, I would imagine. So is it worth starting talking to those stakeholders now and start to make a plan for the future?
There's a very simple question there, Councillor True, if you could give a quick and simple answer.
The answer is yes, of course. There's always a rider. The rider is what Councillor Chappell said, which is we are controlled as far as the amount of parking that you can allow by the London plan. But of course, we always press for the maximum amount of parking provision that we're allowed to.
Thank you very much. I think I'm now going to move us on to the next question from James Woodford, and Councillor Chappell will reply. James Woodford, please. Not here. The question is, I would be interested to know if there is any intention to add a doctor's surgery to Hampton Square. This was something I raised at a previous meeting. Councillor Chappell, please.
Well, I'm afraid the simple answer is no. NHS England lead on commissioning GP services, and they haven't got any plans that we're aware of, either for a practice here in Hampton or anywhere else in the borough. That being said, though, there is a lot going on in the borough, and we recently received funding from the Prime Minister's Challenge Fund, which extends GP access across the borough. And this will be a service transformation. It is at the moment a pilot, and the pilot is looking at increasing primary care for appointments between the hours of 8 a.m. and 8 p.m, which, for those of us that work, is extremely useful. And at the moment, we're combining the primary care resources at 4 GP centres or hubs, and these hubs are across the borough. There's one in Twickenham, there's one in East Twickenham, there's one in Hampton Wick, and there's one in Barnes. And my understanding is that the pilot will run until later this year, June of this year, and then we'll look at the results. But certainly, we can continue to highlight the need to have the right infrastructure across the whole borough, and this includes, obviously, GP services and making sure that we can service everybody across the borough.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have a further question for Councillor Chappell on that matter? Thank you. Sorry, there's a lady put her hand up here. Would you like to take there first?
I can do it from here, that's fine. If we have all these new buildings, we have all these new people, the infrastructure is not going to take them. That's alone, we have only 2 doctors. The surgeons can't cope now, so how are they going to cope?
Can you hear at the back?
No.
Would you mind speaking to the microphone? Thank you.
How will the doctors cope with all this new building when we've only got 2 doctors in Hampton? And Hampton Medical Centre is overrun with patients as it is. We can't get appointments. So the infrastructure is already falling down.
I mean, I agree with the premise of your remarks. I mean, I actually feel passionately about the fact that we should not be allowing development without the requirement to provide facilities into the community, what we used to call the old Section 106. Some of the new plans which are coming through, worthy there they are, for the so-called starter homes, for example, in the jargon, no requirement on developers to contribute anything to things like doctor surgeries and to transport facilities and so on. I believe that is wrong. I've been saying in Parliament it's wrong, as has Tanya Mathias and Zach Goldsmith. But there is a general view that the future of London at the moment is build, build, build. I've been calling for a public debate on this. I think we can have it, and we in this borough have to accept our share in that, in terms of growing population. It has to be on kind of terms that you describe, where it's possible to provide facilities and in places where it is feasible to build without destroying the character of communities.
I think we all totally agree that you can't have good quality communities without good quality infrastructure. And that's not just GP services, it's making sure we've got the right number of school places, it's making sure that transport infrastructure is right. And that's one of the biggest bugbears that we have with the residential, offices to residential, where there is no requirement for that. There is no commitment from developers or others to put something back into the community. So we continue to fight to make sure that we have infrastructure to match our houses so that we can build communities and look to the future and not have long-term problems such as you described, because we're all fully aware of it.
These are precisely the points that you can try and put forward into the statements to be put into the Hampton Plan and Hampton Hill Plan.
Thank you very much indeed. I think I'm going to move us on to the next question from Fiona Brennan, which I will now read. Many of our vulnerable residents and I myself have been the victim of scams. I was targeted to be burgled. The police told me that they don't investigate scams or fraud. I subsequently gave them a photograph of the scammers and a photograph of their vehicle, clearly showing the number plate. I got no response, even though the little book of big scams issued by the Met says they should investigate if the suspect can be easily identified. I was advised to call Action Fraud. Why can't we have a dedicated team or officer to investigate scams? Could I ask Councillor Brennan to on that?
Yes, it's an increasing worry. Scams are on the increase, and although obviously when the vulnerable and the old people are vulnerable are preyed on, it does attract more attention. But the fact is that everybody can be targeted by scammers. What the police, in fact, my own, I'm a Richmond councillor, but our Safe and Neighbourhood Sergeant in Richmond, Les Jackson, has actually taken the lead in organising a number of sessions to alert people about scams, and they've been incredibly well attended in Richmond by people from all around the borough and actually beyond. And I think he's about to organise another one. The first one was organised with Zach Goldsmith, but he's doing more. And it isn't the police will investigate, and it's also, I think, very handy. I don't know what your neighbourhood watch network is like in this, but in this area. But in a number of areas, the neighbourhood watch network is excellent about sending out warnings through emails when people in certain roads have been targeted. So that does keep an alert, and it does mean that people are actually neighbours are looking out as well. So we do all have to be very much more aware and on our guard about these things. The police should investigate them. I'm told that they will investigate. But obviously, in this particular case, I think it was a burglary, a suspected burglary. And if they do need some kind of evidence, if they are going to investigate. So it is really important if people feel that they may have been the target of a scam, that they do get in touch with the police.
Could I just add, and here's one for the king of the spin and tweets at the back, Councillor Roberts, who is giving a running commentary on this meeting. He'll like this one. That I was scammed myself not long ago with a telephone call, and I was busy, I wasn't concentrating, and I gave out the information that you don't give out. And I knew damn well I shouldn't give out that information, and I realised, and actually, because I realised I was quick enough to do something about it, which most people who are vulnerable are not. Extremely unpleasant feeling. Happened a few years ago actually to my wife, and she did lose money and still feels pretty violated. I think any woman would by that sort of thing happening, particularly an older person. So we take it extremely seriously, not for those personal reasons generally. These kind of leeches who prey on the vulnerable need to be caught and dealt with severely. I'll certainly raise with the borough commander next time I see him if there's any question of that not being taken seriously, but I agree with what Councillor Fleming said. My experience actually was that they did a lot. It's just very hard to find people who are working from remote telephone calls. But the borough commander I know takes it seriously, but I'll certainly underline that message from this meeting.
Yes, and I just would like to add that I know Sergeant Jackson's planning to organise another meeting, and it will, and I know the last one will be advertised on our community web pages so that people do know when it's going to be.
Please, can you take the microphone so they can hear you?
There are an awful lot of people, and not just elderly, who do not have access to the web. Consequently, leaflets are the only answer through the door.
I agree that not everybody has access to the web. I have a brother who, I'm not going to go into his condition, but there's no way that he's ever going to be using the web, and I'm fully conscious of what you say. Leaflets will go on, but very important.
Thank you very much. It's a very important topic. Any further questions? Right, I'm going to move us on to Faye Byrne. Is she here to ask a question, please? Yes.
When Hampton and Lady Apollo schools were given planning permission for their boathouse, it was on condition that it was community use. What community use has it been put to since, and what could be done to forge more community involvement?
Hi, okay, this I think relates to a planning application from 1996, and it wasn't one I was aware of, I'll be completely honest with you, but I have asked officers, and the simple answer is there wasn't a community use at that time. I've got the details of the application in front of me, and there was a condition, which, and I'll read it out, said that the premises shall be used only for or as a boathouse and for no other purpose, and this was to ensure that it conferred with it being on open space and so on. There is also a right-of-way, there is a footpath which is 2 metres in width in the position shown, hatched green on the plan, I don't have the plan I'm afraid, and shall include such mooring points as the governors and trustees shall reasonably require, and which shall be required to be constructed in accordance with the details forming part of the planning consent. So, as far as I'm aware, looking at the information I've been given, and I have looked at the planning application, there is no community use. And so, if you feel there should be, then I can only suggest that you go directly to Lady Eleanor Hollis and Hampton School and ask them about whether they can open it up for community use, but they aren't required to within their planning.
Well, it was good, that's what was, I was there at the actual
I think we'll all be able to hear you if you use the microphone, please.
It was quite clear because we were at the meeting, actually about something else, that they said it had to be, on condition that it was used for community use.
I'm very sorry, I wasn't around at that meeting myself in 1996, 1997, but what I will do is go back and ask officers to double check, but I have taken quite a lot of information, so I wanted to really understand this myself, and as far as I can see, there isn't anything. If there is, for whatever reason, and somehow we missed it, then we will obviously come back to you. So if you want to contact me directly, then I'm very happy to deal with you directly after this meeting.
Would anyone like to ask a further question about that matter?
Sorry, the schools are obviously, those schools are not within our remit, but I'm just interested, as Councillor Chapel said, I think approaching them directly is the best approach, and we can ask them the question. Was there a particular type of community use which you had in mind, or what are you looking for them to do?
Disabled community, really. There are plenty of disabled people in the bar who would be able to be able to use a boat house. For disabled as well. And I think all the local schools should be able to use, as such when they're getting permission of them, at the time.
We can certainly help pass on that request.
Any further questions on that matter? Okay, I'm going to move us on to a question by James Witham.
I know many things, but I'm not James.
My information has misled me.
I think mine says Jane. I don't know, maybe you're not reading very clearly.
Mine doesn't say Jane, but Jane, how nice to see you, please.
Hello, nice to meet you. My question really is probably going to cause a bit of a stir. It's about poor lighting and the state of the pavements in Station Road and up to Hampton High Street end. So we've got poor lighting, badly spaced, hidden in the trees, at least 6 different types of lampposts, very dark at the High Street end of Station Road. The pavements are atrocious, dangerous and totally mismatched, and we'd like to know if we're going to get any work done on the village pavements, and we know that you do something when somebody has a nasty fall, because outside the Cheese and Wine some poor lady had to stone her faces before that was sorted out. So we're wondering if we are actually going to get any action on this.
Yeah. Councillor.
Yes, I thought it was Jane rather. Yeah. Yes. Well, firstly, on the trees, I will definitely ask officers to inspect the lighting to see the level, and if it's below the recommended levels, which from what you say it is, then obviously we have to come up and look and see it with some improvements. So that inspection can be carried out. And similarly, the trees, if they're obscuring the lights, then they obviously need to be pruned back. So we can take that up, and I will take that back with officers. On the pavements, again, they need it, but pavements do get inspected regularly. Councillor Sleep may want to add something here, as do our roads. And we do have a community roads and pavement fund to which you can nominate roads. But I think, again, we need to get the officers to come and have a look at the specific pavements that you're referring to, and see what work can be done. So it's going to be something in progress, and we'll need to report back to you on it.
The road by Ken Green, half by Ken Green, it is really bad on there.
Could you say that again?
The pavement by Gander Green hasn't really been properly repaired since the houses were built, which has got to be 20 years.
Well, I do know, we struggle. We've tripled our budget on roads and pavements, and there's more and more money always going in. But unfortunately, there's also an ever-increasing demand. So, yes, well, that, if you're saying 20 years, obviously it needs to be inspected. As I say, they are regularly inspected anyway for work. But it is, there is a huge amount of work that we've done on roads and pavements, more than ever before. And I can only say that we will inspect. If Steve...
Well, what I can say is that roads are inspected either at 3 months, 6 months, or 12 months, and that rather depends on how busy they are. So outside the high street, I don't know off the top of my head what the inspection frequency is, but clearly, from the applause that there was, it's an issue that we need to look at. So we will do so. The idea is, in terms of the inspection regime, is that the most significant defects obviously get attended to very quickly, And then in the longer term, the number of inspections that are, sorry, the number of defects that are found feeds into a report is produced by the officers in order to decide which roads are more important than others in terms of being scheduled for repairs. There's another question later, but I'll pick this up on a bit more detail.
Just to add very briefly, it is a matter, as Pamela said, we have invested an enormous amount in it. I think we've got something like 260 odd miles of road in the borough as a whole. We double that, 500 miles of pavement. That's not throwing our hands up and saying we can't do anything. I think it's extremely important. Any fall prevented is an elderly person's life. It's very often elderly people or small children. But if it's an elderly person, it's that person's life perhaps ruined forever. So it's extremely important. We have added not only to the regular programme, we did introduce a scheme for where the community itself, that's not just village plan areas, could put forward ideas about roads that particularly needed doing, which might not fall within the normal criteria. Actually, the fact is that it does take a very long time for people to come around. But the money in that is limited. The money for the pavement programme is limited, but we will try to preserve money for the pavement programme. What I would urge is that in the course of this village planning exercise, we try together as a community to identify those places which are the most critical and the most looking at attention in the eyes of the community. I don't make promises that I can't keep, so I'm not saying that would mean that those will instantly be dealt with, but at least they will not instantly be dealt with in terms of 500 road miles of pavement, but they will at least get registered as community priorities, and that will be in the minds of officers and my colleagues.
Thank you very much. We've got one more very quick question.
The Hampton Village Traders have spent an awful lot of time with the various councils, walking the streets, going through it, talking parking. We've had the parking people down, we've had people down about the pavements, and yet still you go away, still you come back, there's no money. Twickenham and Richmond look fantastic, Whitton looks fantastic, most of the borough looks fantastic, but Hampton, right at the end, yeah, here we go again.
Chairman said we should move on, but I don't want to move on. That shouldn't be the case. Nowhere should feel like that or be like that. It's the whole purpose of having an exercise of this kind. I can assure you that when the village planning exercise and the uplift process, and by the way, there's been a big transformation in Hampton Square here, not so far away, which is some element of investment, and you can laugh it off. The point is, Whitton now feels, Whitton at the edge of the, said it was the edge of the borough, said all those kinds of things. Whitton people now do feel that as a result of an exercise that's gone over on a period of years, doing this, that something has been done to change the appearance and make that community feel valued. And I hope that this will come out of this exercise too. It won't solve everybody's problems, not everybody will be satisfied. But let's not write off the dialogue and the planning exercise before it even begins. I can tell you, talk to people who live in Whitton and Heathfield. A few years ago they felt that nothing was happening there. They don't feel that anymore.
Absolutely. That's terribly important. I wanted to move on because there's another question coming up on pavements in just a minute. But let's take the next one, which is from Caroline Badgery.
Moving on a bit from parking, actually, could we not ask for a rate reduction for various businesses in the area that have car parks and don't use them at evenings and weekends?
I think that's probably one, if it's rates, it's probably for me. I mean, I think that's a very interesting idea. It's something we've spoken about with senior officers. There are legal issues about whether that would be possible. And obviously, I'm at the moment not looking about giving away money that one can get in. We currently don't control business rates, although we can give an abatement. We're hoping to do a deal with the government over the next 2 or 3 years that we will get control of business rates. Whether we can do that now from a standing start, I'm not sure. I will go back and ask for better particulars. It would have a cost. But I certainly think that as things go forward, it's a really good idea that one should take into account. Remember, in a Waitrose expansion in another part of the borough, we did insist that the car parking be open to community use, and that happens with Sainsbury's and other bodies. Certainly looking forward, certainly for the Hampton Park expansion, although we wouldn't be the direct planning authority, there are issues that we could look at. So as we move towards controlling business rates and perhaps having more discretion, I'm trying to remember your question. I think it's a really, really interesting and constructive idea. I think at the moment it might not fly, but it could well in due course. Thanks very much.
Good, excellent. Can I move us on to another pavements issue from Sally Wilson?
Sally's already had a question. I'm not moving this one, I'm Valerie Coates. And I think really the pavement question has been well covered by other questioners. I would just like to add, I'd just like to add Ashley Road to the list and also echo the thoughts about Station Road opposite the Wine and Cheese, where there's a lot of plane trees that roots have lifted the pavements. I know that's a particular issue, but they do seem to have solved it on the Wine and Cheese side of the road, so maybe it could be solved on the Station Road between Plevenham up as far as down Green. In that section, there's a number of plane trees where the pavement is lifted and is very uneven and dangerous. One other little point is that some roads with less footfall appear to have been done very recently. And so we sort of wonder what the priorities might be there, why those less footfall ones have been done, but not these what we would call more important ones. Thank you.
Does anyone want to respond to that?
Yeah, I should respond. Possibly the reason why some of the roads with lower footfall have been done is going to be down to the community road and pavement fund that was discussed earlier. So if residents have nominated their road for repair, then it gets that small allocation out of the village pot to fund that. So that's probably the explanation for Gillian closing the explanation.
We all want to buy the back, but the only ones that bought it were the bloody millionaires out.
I can tell you I have no idea what it is. So, from that point of view, what it comes down to is the number of people who nominated. So it is done on that basis. I don't know the roads represented to me. But anyway, on that is how discretionary funds go about. We discussed earlier the process of inspections, and then that feeds into the report together with a number of complaints. And when residents phone up and say there is a problem in my road, that is logged. So that is worth doing if you feel strongly about it. And, they all go into the melting pot each year, and a list of roads is produced where maintenance is required, and out of that we have to prioritise based on the condition, based on complaints, but also now based on the number of comments that come through on the village planning process. So what we're kicking off today with the village planning, it's worth mentioning if you think there is a particular place where there is a problem, highlight it, and it will go, as I say, it will go to that melting pot. On Station Road itself, the trees are an issue throughout the whole borough. But one of the things that makes the borough so nice is the trees, and we have to live with them. So they do grow, they do live the pavement slabs, and we will come around. As I say, the inspectors will look at it. If they identify a problem, they will endeavour to get it fixed. There are intervention limits which we abide to, and I will ask them specifically to look at the station road on the other side from the Mine Cheeseman. We'll see the future.
And actually, road by the station.
Oh, sorry, yes, Ashton Road. I actually took a walk down there last week, and I would agree with you, there are some problems. But the one thing I would say, though, is that some of those forecourts are private that are not actually owned by the council. I believe some of the forecourts...
the place on the opposite side of the road where there's no shops aren't.
Right, okay. Well, again, it's going to be a case of asking the officers to go and inspect it, but as I say, the private land is something that obviously
Okay, thank you. Sorry, someone got a question out from somewhere here? No?
Who has the liability then? Somebody falls?
Sorry, can you speak into the microphone, please?
Who has the liability when somebody falls and has a serious accident on those forecourts that are not owned by the council?
generally speaking, if it's private land, they will be responsible for maintaining it, so they always have liability.
I think there's clearly quite a lot of work and consultation at least to continue on this area. And that's very clear, the strength of feeling. I think I get the feeling very much up here that people are taking it on board. Let's hope so. I'm sure they have. I've got one more question, a very quick one, which I'll read out. Templar Place, why don't street cleaners clean here as it is now an adopted road? Somebody just deal quickly with that.
The answer is that it should be. So I'll ask officers to investigate. There's absolutely no reason, so we'll take it up with our contractor.
Any further question on that? Any further point on that? They're going to take it up with the contractor, it should be being clear. Okay. Steve Parker, the last of the pre-planned questions.
So Steve couldn't be here tonight, I'll do it for him.
Cheese and wine.
Cheese and wine, yeah. Steve's written, we understand that Hampton Hill is receiving a 1.8 million uplift this year. Can you please advise us when Hampton Village might receive something similar?
Yes, it is indeed. And at the moment, I can't give you any information about when Hampton Village may be similarly benefit. But we are just beginning the village planning process here. And this is a real opportunity for you to get engaged and identify these priorities so that we can then look at them, see how some of them can be addressed. Okay, not this year or next year, but in the future and into a future programme of work. So, I mean, this is the opportunity, this is the beginning, both with the supplementary planning document, which is obviously going to be about the key features of the area, but then also with the village plan itself, which is a much more dynamic, well, it is a dynamic document that does get refreshed. So there are the drop-ins, there are the walkabouts, and the walkabouts are very important because you can go around with consultants and with officers, so you can actually point out things to them. And then that can all be fed back in. And so there's been a lot of work to be done, and there will be later on a stakeholder session to which obviously you as Hampton Village traders will be invited. So this is the time to start talking about what you want to see and your priorities for Hampton. And just to sort of pick up a tiny bit on the trees that were mentioned as well, this time with the village plan, we are going to, our tree officer will be around at some of the drop-ins, because we recognise just how important the trees are in all of our areas to everybody. And so we're going to sort of bring trees and how we can look at a better, for the future again, a better process for planting, and we're bringing all that into the village planning process. So, this is your opportunity. I will be around, so will Councillor Chappell and Councillor Speak, so at some of the drop-ins. So, please do let us know.
Take the microphone to the lady there.
Yes, you're talking about getting involved in the village planning process, but we've been involved, lots of us, since this time last year when we started to have meetings. So it feels like you're telling us now that we're just starting again. I don't quite understand why you're saying that. We've been involved, we CD, a lot of people turned out, a lot of people turned out last year. We are very much involved. We shouldn't be having to wait for another long process as well. We should be moving more swiftly. I also think that these were pre-planned questions, and quite a few of them didn't have any answers ready, which was a bit disappointing. And you were going back for more information with pre-planned questions, and you should be covering some more of the information at this part of the session.
If I could just explain, I think that what was engaged, that the sessions and the meetings that you had before were organised by the Hampton Society and our community links.
Together last year.
Yes, but
organised by the council.
Well,
the village plan.
I think this was prior to actually what I call the proper process of the village planning beginning. I think these were events to get people to enthuse people, get people engaged. I attended a similar event in Hampton Hill last summertime when that was organised by Hampton Hill Association and Hampton Traders. But the actual village planning process is beginning now when we're looking at the supplementary planning documents. So this is it. I do take your point that you've registered these concerns before, but this is now when the work really begins. So I'm sorry if somehow you felt, and obviously some of this has been fed back, but this is really the work begins here. This is when we have our teams of officers, engaged, and they will be at the drop-ins, and the consultants will be at the drop-ins. The others, I think, were events that were organised very much with our community links officers at the council, not, shall we say, specific service directorates themselves, whereas they will be much more involved in this whole village planning process. And indeed, I wasn't at your, nor was Councillor Chapel, I wasn't at any of your sort of these pre-events that were organised, apart from the Hampton Hill one. Yes, from now on, the process really does start.
You've taken a year to get.
We do want to hear what you're saying. Could you take the microphone?
Lady's saying it's taken a year since the first meeting.
What's been happening, I know lots obviously has been happening, but we felt we were at the start of the process in January last year. So it feels like we're going right back to the beginning again.
I think, I don't want, Pamela knows more than I do about this, but the way these things have operated is there's a sort of conversation with the community links people and so on, which gathers things. This is a specific process, part of that, which will lead to a legal document, what they call a supplementary planning document, which will be incorporated in the local plan, which actually, for the relating to the character, specific the roads and so on in Hampton, is about how Hampton should be developed and protected in the future, and is related specifically to that. So is a particularly hard-edged part of this process. The dialogue and the community links and the community dialogue should continue always. I'm not actually interested in trying to give a load of spin. I think I said at the start, I'm not interested in that. If it's not working for you, it's not working for me or for the council. You're the bosses, the council, we're hired hands, okay? So what we want to do is, there will always be, I think there is totally justifiable, understandable cynicism. I also said this at the start, about the political process in this country. I do not want to be part of that. I want us to be engaged with talking to people, hearing from people, and I understand your doubts and your concerns, the lack of resources that there are, the time things take. Believe you me, these are frustrating. But we're coming here as your servants, the council, to try and put out a hand and lend an ear and see, for whatever mistakes that have been made, maybe the process could have been handled better. I don't know. I think the dialogue has been tried. But let's actually try and make this conversation over the next few weeks work. That's what I try to go out in the morning to do, is to work for this community. So I apologise, and I repeat, I apologise on behalf of the council for any shortcoming that has been as a result of anything the council has failed to do that it could have done. I can't apologise for the fact we can't repair every pavement in the borough just like that. And I'm not making any false promises of what we're able to do. But please, let's try and have a community dialogue which identifies some things that we can do together, and hopefully we will have an uplift one day for Hampton. I want every part of this borough to be the best. So I think this borough is the best place to live in London.
Thank you very much. Lady over there has a hand up for a question. Could you take the microphone, please? We've just completed the pre-planned questions, the pre-submitted questions. We'll take this and then we'll move on to questions from the floor. Thank you.
I moved to Hampton around March of last year, and it feels like I've really come down in the world. I've lived in St Margaret's, I've lived in Teddington, I've lived in Twickenham, and I've lived in the borough consecutively for 30 years, and I've ended up on Station Road, and it is the most appalling, shocking road you can ever come across. It's such a nice area with Gander Green on one side, the vista of the church on the other, but the road is just shocking. I confer with the lady about the pavements, and I think I know why, because your policy for clearing up, for repairing the pavement seems to be only if there's something wrong with it. So if a hole develops, you go and just deal with that particular hole. Then something else happens a metre or less than a metre away, and we deal with only that. So if any of you on the stage were to walk down Station Road, you'd find all kinds of colours and all kinds of bumps and all kinds of different things, where every time a particular bit of road has been repaired. And I think it's time now to repair an entire pavement, which is probably going to be cheaper in the long run. And there's a lot of pavements that's holding water, so we are constantly stepping into puddles, even when the rain has stopped for 2 or 3 days. And the dog is stepping into water, and I'm stepping into water. And then when I come to a certain corner where Beverly Stadium is, I actually have to make sure there is no passing traffic, because there's so much water on the corner that were I to cross that road just as a car or a bus is coming, I am going to get completely splashed with water. And the other thing is that I went down towards the church end, towards High Street, and you have not allowed any parking there. Now I do understand Station Road is a difficult road for parking. With all the cottages there, there's not much parking, and we all have to muck in with our cars. But that is a wide stretch of road, and I've noticed on Station Road you have started allowing cars to park on the pavement and park off. And I talked to one of the councillors, Gareth Roberts. He came to my home and visited me, because I have to work in the mornings from home and in clients' homes in the afternoon. And what I do is I drop my daughter to school and I come back and I circle the entire area in my car, sometimes for half an hour or 1 hour, looking for parking space when I've got clients waiting and I have conference calls to make. And I have no parking available, and you have not allowed any parking at that end of the road. It's broad, and if you were to allow parking half on and half off, you could still get 2 buses coming either way. And I just don't understand why we can't do that.
Thank you.
Well, I'll let Stephen Speak say something about the parking issue. I mean, one of the things, again, in this process is a walkabout. I mean, let us go to and see the places that we're talking about. Now, I happen to agree with you. I don't agree with you about, I'm sad to hear you say coming down in the world. No one should say that about any community. And I don't believe that is the case. No, sorry, if I may